That's permit condition. And let's see what else we got. We can actually expand it. The hard structure that's there now, we'd have to add solids handling facilities and retrofit those solids handling bays to membrane basins. There's 3 additional. One of those you have to keep in reserve. So you have 6 of them available, and you'd have a hard capacity of 0.75 without pouring concrete, except for
Solids handling.
solids handling, yeah.
So in terms of the processing side, I think that good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor?
So in terms of what would be necessary as growth continues to occur, in my mind, it's the additional membranes that we potentially would have to put in there, as well as solids handling. And we currently have a permit with the Department of Ecology for our spray field. And that spray field has not been utilized much at all because we just aren't producing enough Class A reclaimed water. But as we continue to get additional flow, I think that will occur.
Yeah,
So,
pond and spray field, they're rated for each to receive no more than 125,000 gallons a day right now. I mean, that's basically because the spray field is rated at that. And that's judged off for influent flow. So,
and we've actually reached out to the Department of Ecology because as we compare like facilities that we have here in Mason County to the Belfair plant, it seems like it's the restrictions or the permits are very different in terms of capacity. So I think we feel pretty strongly that with a conversation with the Department of Ecology, it could be possible to change those limitations.
it'll require an engineering report just to describe all that, the history and what we've documented and how it's performed.
And then it's re-rating the
Yeah.
existing
Yes.
infrastructure
Yeah,
to a higher
because
capacity.
it was in total unknown, right? The whole
Right.
thing was built without any background knowledge at all, any of it. So, yeah, after this many years and documented performance, you're gonna have to do an engineering report anyway, with
Do you-
any expansion.
Do you have an idea of what you might be able to increase the capacity to with a re-rating study? Do you have any?
I really
idea?
don't know.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
So it's a mystery still.
But our similar facility is double, correct? North Bay?
It's almost triple.
Oh,
It's at
triple.
.36.
Okay, same area.
And it's
Same
triple the-
characteristics.
Same size.
Okay, well, that's a good
Yeah,
indicator.
just to give
Yeah.
exactly an indicator.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, Ned, you'll know, anything to do with wastewater, it's, what do you do with the end products, the water and the solids? That's my main concern. Everything in between is doable.
Right.
So that's where we're at with our current facility, and then what brings us here today is that the City of Bremerton wrote us a letter, Mayor Wheeler, and said, hey, we'd like for the Mason County to actually extend their sewer service into this southern area of what is called the acronym is PSIC. And Ned, you come and help me with that.
Puget Sound Industrial Center. Yep. It used to be SKIA, which I liked better. Now it's PSIC.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's kind of what brings us here today. We've had some discussions with the city, formal discussions with the city, with staff. Loretta and Richard and Ned and his team have continually talked through this time period, kind of saying, hey, where are you at, what's going on, kind of what do the future issues look like here. I think that I'm going to give the city an opportunity to kind of talk about where they're at and with their capital facilities plan and kind of their plan for providing these urban services to their area. But that's where we're at today, so that's what this discussion will be about.
All right. Well, before we get into some of the technical parts and some details like capital facilities plan, I'm Greg Wheeler. Good morning,
Good morning.
and I appreciate everybody coming together like this. Thank you, Mark,
Yeah.
for helping convene this. Good to see you, commissioners. And it looks like you just, I walked in and I was kind of catching up real quick. I think you're covering capacity for your own first responsibility, which is Belfair and the UGA. and then kind of leading in a little bit to what kind of development might occur at the border to, to be compatible. You want to ensure compatibility, and you have the capacity. So appreciate everybody with this conversation. Mark, you wanted to get right into our capital facilities plan? Is that what the commissioners want? Or-
that's the most recent thing that I've seen,
Okay.
I think, from the city of Bremerton.
Okay.
So really, this part of the agenda is open for the city of Bremerton to kind of give maybe a little bit of history on the conversations or the ideas that the city has had partnering with Mason County in the past, and how do you want to move forward?
Okay. Well, Ned's been at this longer than me, but let me just go in a little bit with the council president here representing the city council. We've developed our comprehensive plan, and especially with the industrial area, with the goal of creating a lot of jobs for opportunity for our community. And we envision in the entire industrial area up to 10,000 jobs. And we know, we all know why we're planning in this matter. As we grow in our region, we realize that, and our industrial lands in the Puget Sound region become more scarce, and right now they're very scarce. We have to be a part of that solution to provide jobs in our region. And since we anticipate growth in our area, here in the Kitsap County, Mason County, Olympic Peninsula area, we are planning for that. And so, of course, with jobs, there's a lot, transportation is included in the planning, how we do housing, and it's, and then the future of our corridor, the 16 and then I-5 corridor, we know congestion is coming with the 1.3 million coming to our region. So we want to provide opportunity locally, be a part of the economic solution for the region. And I think Ned, if you want to jump in, that's the bigger picture with council, and council approves our plans, obviously. So these are all pre-approved plans, so we are moving forward and implementing that with this type of agreement. And of course, with the council president here representing the council, because he was around when I was when we adopted these plans. So, yeah. So, Ed, you
Take it away, Ned.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd add a little bit about the Puget Sound Industrial Center. So you just described a very challenging process for providing sewer, right? And it's been a challenge for the county with your development. The Puget Sound Industrial Center has also been a challenge for the city. There's a vision of industrial, light manufacturing, industrial jobs, economic growth. The challenge for us is that we have no sewer infrastructure in the Puget Sound Industrial Center. The port does, and we're working with the port, hopefully to take that system over at some point in the future. It's pretty far away from our treatment plant, right? The south end of the Puget Sound Lake Flora Road is pretty far away from our treatment plant, so getting wastewater service all the way back to our plant is a challenge. When the original planning documents were done, it envisioned a couple of MBR facilities, like 2 MBR facilities, providing one for the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center, one for the north end, hopefully at the lagoon, site where there's actually flow. And one of the fundamental things that you want if you're going to, if you want flow, right? I think you guys know this. You want flow, right?
Yes.
So I don't know that we were when we first did this planning, I didn't really even know what an MBR facility was. They were kind of new. And so we plunked them down on a map, and we came up with some costs from a consultant, and I think those costs are extremely low at this point from 2008 and 2012, right? So you don't get growth without infrastructure, and there's a plan for the Belfair bypass or the freight corridor to come up through there. We've got a challenge with water. We have water available in the Puget Sound Industrial Center. But it's going to cost some millions of dollars to get water down to serve the south end. It already serves the north end. Let me see, I just lost my train of thought. Well, anyway, it's challenging to get growth, to get started, you know, in the area, other than at the north end where the port is pretty well established. So we would like to promote growth in Puget Sound Industrial. It's a MIC, it's a manufacturing and industrial center. There's not very many of those in the state, which means it's really intended for regional jobs and regional growth. But we're kind of stuck in the mud a little bit. So, and this, if we agree on sewer service, it doesn't even solve the problem in its entirety, right? We still have water, we still have transportation issues. There's some other things that need to be addressed to get, you know, the infrastructure available for growth in the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center. So, I don't know if that helps at all, but that's what we're working with, and it's been challenging to even get off the ground. So,
You know, the transportation, we've leaned in and we've joined Mason County with being champions for the Belfair bypass. And so, with the idea that that combined with our Gorst effort would create freight mobility and worker mobility, provide an opportunity for our counties. And so, this is a small but very important piece is the sewer portion. But we've got a lot of work, as Ned said, on the rest of the infrastructure, including continuing to champion for the two mega projects, Belfair Bypass and then Gorst, in order, and to get those done. So, yeah.
And with the crazy legislative session that we just got out of, we're super fortunate to actually still have the Belfair bypass on the
Yes.
list. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope to get, well, you know, it's political, but it's not signed yet, so I'm hoping for sign.
Yeah.
Yep.
so the first bullet here is capacity, and we made a request for service, a 20-year sort of threshold request. It doesn't encompass the full planned demand, but I think it's a reasonable number for a 20-year projection of what our needs would be. So I think from the planning documents, the original planning documents, I think 500,000 gallons a day is like the full build out of the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center. But I think we want to get off the ground. I think we want to make progress, right? And so let's say that we can come to agreement and that 160,000 gallons a day is actually provided by Mason County. There's still a gap, you know, in the future potentially, and I don't know how far out that is going to be a problem, you know, or for instance, the Port of Bremerton, I think they have about 80 or 90,000 gallons a day now is their average. Well, they've had that industrial area, you know, and that infrastructure for like 50 years. So they haven't even reached 100,000 gallons a day on a wet month average, I don't think. So it could last a long time. It could go very far out into the future. It just depends on the interest in growth in that area and if people see that as the right place to build, right? But it takes infrastructure to get them started. It's a tall order to expect somebody to come in and to build all of that out of pocket up front, right? To front load all of the infrastructure it needs to just get development started in the area, so.
What was the recent expansion? What's the large on-site rating for the port now, Ned?
Oh, that's a great question, Loretta.
Maybe, do we know?
I think they were at 72.5, and I think they went to 97,000 gallons a day. And I think they had to stay just
Okay.
below 100,000 gallons a day. I think that's the limit for a large on-site septic.
So
Richard?
they have room for a little
Am I right?
bit of growth, but not.
Okay.
I don't know on the large on sites.
Okay,
That's Ian. Ian
Yeah.
could answer that question.
okay, all right. So I think
That's true.
that's the right number.
Okay.
Okay. So, is there anything more to talk about in terms of capacity? I mean, do we want to talk about the Commerce Grant related to capacity? I mean, so,
So, yeah, absolutely. I think that it'd be great to kind of get a little bit of history on the city of Bremerton actually applied for some funds through the Department of Commerce and.
Yep, and it was with the intent of sharing the proceeds of that grant, so because there are capacities, you've got a choke point in your collection system, it's to design improvements to improve capacity in your collection system, and also to look at your treatment plant upgrades that might be needed to accommodate providing service to the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center. And then there's brand new infrastructure that will be required, pump stations and force mains and collection system. And so I think of the $3 million, the split's like 1.6 million to Bremerton for pump station and force main and collection system design, and 1.4 to Mason County to accommodate your collection system improvement design and the treatment plant. It doesn't have any construction money associated with it. It just gets you to the end of the design phase. So, yeah, but it's intended to address capacity issues and provide the new infrastructure necessary.
So this agreement with the Department of Commerce is directly with the city of Bremerton. Mason County in this case would be a subrecipient to the city of Bremerton. And one of the stipulations that the Department of Commerce has kind of put out there would be that you have to have some type of an interlocal agreement with Mason County before we actually release these funds to do that. And that's kind of what brings us here today, is to have that conversation.
Madam Chair. I have other questions later on, but on that, I'm getting curious because we didn't even know about that until it was before the legislature. It didn't publicly come out. How did that come about?
It was actually promoted by the local development community, so we weren't the lead on it necessarily, but the money needs to come to the municipality to disperse, so.
Who was the lead? How was the lead? Because that's an odd thing all of a sudden to come up. If you didn't know about it either, or did you know about it? We didn't until all of a sudden we were told that this is before the legislature, and we're like, what? What's before the legislature? Because it had never come to us.
David Overton is a large landowner, and the Suquamish tribe have land out there, and I think there was a partnership to approach the legislature to try to find design money, which is great because we don't get grant money for wastewater, right? Grant money for wastewater improvements, that's unicorns.
Only
right?
to hook up somebody existing.
Right,
Yeah,
so
right,
the
right.
fact that they were successful in going to the legislature to get a disbursement of $3 million for design and planning, that's a pretty big deal. Like that's never happens for us. So it used to happen more often. You had Tiger grants and Stag grants and things like that, but those have dried up. So it's a great benefit to both of us if we can take advantage of the grant-funded design.
I think, Commissioner, we'd have to go back, look at some notes. I mean, there was a lot of evidence at the time that Mason County was looking for solutions to a plant that had been overbuilt and was looking for a way to, and Laura, you can correct me, but there's some history where, well documented, that there was dire straits back in the day. And and so it was a win-win for us to go forward with the grant, and we'd have to, again, do some digging to find out the evidence, but it turns out the plant now is not in dire straits, and you're in good solid ground. But back when we were going forward, that wasn't the case.
So you're correct. Before you came in, you had talked about the committees and stuff like that. We had a citizen committee, I was the chair of it, and helped put together, and we were in extreme dire straits. There's no question of that. We were looking to hook up the Port of Bremerton because they actually had customers. What a concept, right?
Yes.
But no, we were at that time in dire straits. I was just trying to figure out how it even happened because we found out about it after the fact, not in the conversation. That's what I'd always been curious about.
Yeah.
But I think I understand it. So you guys were kind of in the same position. It was going on, and then you were included after it's already started. And
We were included during the process of trying to finalize the scope and things like that, of what the improvements would need to be. And I think we talked to staff about, like, what is the staff scope, or the Mason County scope for the treatment plant improvements. So there was some discussion at a staff level about it.
Yeah.
But it's not trying to get Loretta in trouble.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Well, like we needed to come up with
We have a timeline.
a dollar amount and what the scope of that was. But it was a pretty short timeline
It
of
was about a
conversation.
1-month mash,
Yeah.
basically.
Right, like,
And
it
then
was a
for
hurry.
I know,
our,
I'm aware of that part, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
that's what I'm talking
before,
about.
Got that far.
for our scope of work, it was simply lifting what we already had in our capital facilities plan. These were improvements we need to make regardless of who we're serving. So we're just at that point where it's time to start planning for expansion.
In
It's
my
kind of exciting
experience-
to
Yeah.
see, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
the
No,
the
go
growth that's in Mason County
Yeah.
right now and being out of the red and having
Yeah.
the state auditor not come after us with findings is amazing.
That's amazing, yeah, that is
And
great.
Long time
so
coming.
super excited about
Where's the auditor?
the forward motion
Yes,
that we have.
So when it comes to the Commerce Grant, like, it's my experience that typically somebody comes and wants us to build something at our cost before, right? So for someone to show up with the potential for grant funding for design of improvements that we need to move something forward, that doesn't happen very often, right? So I don't wanna look that gift horse in the mouth too much, but.
Yeah, I think we kind of were challenged with some similar concerns, right? So how do we continue to promote growth within our urban growth area? And the commission made a decision back in I think the decision was maybe made in 23, and then the work actually occurred in 24, but we were able to extend our transmission lines from what we call Olympic Ridge and Olympic View area, underneath the Navy railroad tracks, and all the way up to the MTA Park and Ride area now. And so our transmission lines are very close to the Kitsap County, Mason County border.
Well, and to work back, I mean, Bremerton was very much involved in the planning and the design of that as well, because it was envisioned, even way back then, that they would be a potential customer. So Ned and his team were part of all of the reviews, the selecting of consultants, and all of those good things. So,
Ensuring capacity would be available.
Yes,
Right.
planning for capacity.
And the unique part about that is that I think that we were in a fortunate position that we actually had some ARPA money that the commission had said, "Hey, we're gonna dedicate $1.5 million to this," and then even bigger and better is the Public Works Trust Fund loan that we received. So we had Public Works Trust Fund money at 0.54, not 5.4, 0.54 interest rate. Pretty amazing. I'm too old to see that again in my lifetime, I think.
It's hard to find.
But yeah, super hard to find, and super fortunate for Mason County in the sense that, the ability to actually do that extension at that cost. Absolutely have some additional debt on the books, and something that we kind of have to plan for in the future, and how we're gonna pay for it. And of course, if you look at just the utility itself, utilities do better when they're bigger, right? So you actually have an economy of scale when you have more customers. You're able to spread those costs over more people. We have some super small utilities down in Russellwood area that may have 150 people on it, right? And so you could imagine you have to replace a water pump to the tune of 60,000. How you spread that across 150 people?
Right.
It's pretty scary. So it's nice to have additional customers, and we're definitely continuing to look for that. So that from a positive perspective, I think just looking at the utility itself, that absolutely is something that we want to have. And why we extended that sewer, the large reason why we extended that sewer into the railroad tracks up north.
Do you want to talk about economic impact now?
Absolutely.
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, so
I
that's-
think we kind of understand where we are and where we aren't.
Yep. So I provided the city with some, we had a discussion before this. I had actually briefed the board,
Right.
talked to them about a potential interlocal agreement, received some feedback from them and what their concerns were and items that they'd like to see in an interlocal agreement. So we revised it and had some talking points, and Loretta and I met with the city to kind of go over those, and the result of that meeting was, hey, let's sit down and have a government-to-government meeting where the decision makers can actually sit down and talk about these concerns with each other and potential mitigation, if there is any, for that.
Okay. Am I up on the?
Well, I can give you the basics, right?
Yeah, I
So
think it'd be good if
basics
you
are,
kind of led that part.
yeah,
of it.
let me lead it, absolutely. The counties are different than cities.
Right.
We have sales tax and property tax. Those are our two main revenues to cover our general services that we provide to every constituent within Mason County. So super limited. We often call it the two-legged stool.
Yeah.
Cities are different. You guys actually have property tax, sales tax, B&O tax, utility tax. You have other sources of revenue that can help support these types of things. So we're a little jealous sometimes of cities, or I am, because it's like, God, I wish I had some of those opportunities. The legislature has talked about enacting those things, but it hasn't happened. So since we are so reliant on sales tax, and I think one of the concerns that I have heard from our commission is, what is the potential impact to our community in Belfair? They are the largest sales tax generator for Mason County. So if there were development up in the PSIC area that was competing with the businesses that we currently have within the Belfair area, with destination-based sales tax, if you're actually purchasing those items there, then that sales tax is gonna go to the city and not come to the county. And so that was a concern that our commissioners had about the potential economic impact to not only our business owners within the Belfair area, but also the county as a whole in terms of sales tax revenue.
If I can, I'm gonna, also to expand on that though, also the ability or possibility that we may lose businesses because of it through competition or whatever. So we not only lose the sales tax, but we lose the property tax, we lose the ERU for the businesses that we currently have. How to mitigate that and what that might look like to mitigate it.
I'd be, as a lifelong resident of Bremerton and with sharing a boundary or a border with the Navy, I'll, just talk a little bit about what might happen, what a scenario might be with Mason County and Belfair. So if there was robust development in the south end of the city, that a real employer's coming in, where are those employees gonna come from? And where's the growth gonna occur to accommodate the demand? I think it's a guess that the residents either come into Kitsap County and Bremerton, or they're gonna decide Mason County is their place, the future worker looking for opportunity and from an employer in the south end, they're gonna choose, or they'll choose Mason County. I can tell you right now, Mason County is attractive. If there's a lower cost of living, there's a nice rural feel to it, there's a good environmental aspect that is gonna be an attractive for a future employer to recruit people. So what happens then is you get a workforce crossing the county line, working in Bremerton and taking those dollars back home to Mason County. And if you're like Bremerton, your sales tax is promoted by a couple of things. We have one major industry, we have auto industry, so we have that. We also have construction, which has been robust. And then the one thing that's kept us moving upwards, even through the pandemic, was delivery, Amazon. A lot of people are shopping Amazon. I mean, it is, and that will continue. That is happening on every, if you go drive through Bremerton, you're gonna see a delivery truck. You're gonna see Amazon. You will, I can't say what the future will bring, but I can say what we're enjoying. Those sales tax that we collect are at the destination. That's what will happen in today's world, would happen in Mason County and in Belfair. So those are living wage jobs, which is my goal, to come back to be produced in our region. And then where the people live and find opportunity to live, I think it's an even bet. It's going to be Mason County is going to be attractive for those new residents, and they're going to take those dollars back home.
So Mayor, that's if we were to get the big industrial. I'll be honest with you, I'm not as worried about that because that's,
Okay.
in a sense, that could be a very big benefit. Understand, I live in North Mesa, as you know, and you'll see me at your stores. Sometimes you'll see me at your theaters, and because that's where we go up there.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand the sharing of each other's benefits. I wonder, one of the things I'm looking at for myself, because as I said, I represent them, is being asked to sign something without knowing the impact, what the impact would look like, how much it would be. But if retail, for example, went up there, that would have a different impact than would big industrial facility. Have you considered restrictions of anything built out there for commercial retail that would impact this? Because that would help to change how I view this, because currently I view it as a threat. I lose one or two big businesses down there, I lose community members, I lose tax, I lose jobs, I lose everything for creating a competition for myself, for my own community. But if we can put sidebars around it, that helps to protect that, I'm more interested in listening to what it is, because I am looking at trying to make it all work for everybody if I can find a way. But right now, you can imagine, I'm pretty afraid, because that is my community. And if we had direct competition and we're creating it by putting in the facility, you can see how that might be concerning. But I am open to looking at ways to mitigate that. And that's where the idea of perhaps money coming in, sharing a sales tax or something, that would mitigate our sales tax issue. Maybe, something for mitigating on property or anything else.
Yeah.
But the actual jobs itself and the actual retail that we would lose and the places that could possibly close is the biggest concern.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we have traffic too. Right now, any homes get built, it's gonna be built with ours because we have the facilities to do it.
Yeah.
In order to have that benefit for both of us, we'd have to find a benefit for us. That's how I'm looking at it. So have you considered restrictions?
If I could let you know, Commissioner, that you're not alone in your fears. Being a neighbor to the shipyard, how is it that a city can be a lower income city next to an employer of that magnitude who produces that kind of jobs? And so there's uncertainty of what the market's gonna produce in the south end or in the north end of Mason County, Belfair, south end of us. We don't know what that brings, but what could happen is the other scenario where we are responsible for all the infrastructure except a shared responsibility for the sewer plant. And then all those tax dollars leave every day, those paychecks leave Bremerton and go back across Mason County to support a Mason County economy. And that is a likely scenario. And so when we enter into a regional agreement, there's unknown. I can't, we don't know if which one. And I do understand your concern, just so you know, there's uncertainty. There could be, maybe a retail complex could be in our future. We don't know what the market's gonna deliver to us. And it's the same with, if it's a major employer where you go for the job and that's it, just like I do every day. It's a Mariners game every day. 25,000 people come into the city and they're an employer of 25. So we have obviously a lot of residents in Bremerton who work in the shipyard, but we have 25,000 people coming in and leaving. And so it would be the same scenario with, who's gonna be the employer, at that time.
But if we provide the service, it's gonna suck out of our area, because we got 20 to 25,000 people going by there every day. There's no other residential around it or anything like that. So whatever gets built there, and that's the low-hanging fruit, I would assume. We've all been around long enough, we know that the path of least resistance, right? The low-hanging fruit, you got 25,000 captured customers going by, that's gonna be the biggest possibility right there on the highway. So I hope though that we could consider or have a conversation about mitigation of some sorts. Because without that, then we may be setting ourselves up to kill our own economy. And since since we're the ones that are providing that service, and it doesn't exist without it, how would we do that without some type of provision to help protect us?
Yeah, wish we had a crystal ball.
Yeah,
But even if
same here.
Yeah,
was going
but even
on.
if we didn't, it's still a threat that we have to worry about, right?
Yeah, well, I'm thankful for Amazon also, well, because they deliver a lot to me, but also because we do get to keep those sales tax.
Yeah.
Stabilizes sales
Right,
tax.
right,
Yeah.
so I wanna, make sure that the legislature gets that, thank you.
Yep.
There's a lot more that I wanna accuse them of, but that's definitely a
That's
a
helpless.
positive, yeah.
Yep. Areas like ours who lost our retail to Silverdale, and yours, which is still an emerging, a rural area that's emerging. These are big sales tax benefits. And yeah, they get it out, of the few attaboys, they get that, that's one of them, so.
And I do know you guys know the feeling of losing the retail, because we
Yeah.
went through that. I've been around there forever too, and I remember when everything was focused right there on the east side. That was the new mecca for everything.
Yeah.
And then it changes and it shifts just up the road, and the effect on your economy was huge. I remember, because it was my economy too.
Yep.
That's why I'm afraid. I have
Yeah.
the fears that I have, but it doesn't mean it can't be mitigated. I just would like to honestly open up the idea that, talk about what it would be to mitigate it.
Yeah, well, I can let you know right now, I think Silverdale would trade places with us in their economy. There's a lot of vacant brick and mortars right now, and they're struggling. And we get the destination sales tax from delivery, and again, we're trending a different way than the county is, so.
Regarding changing zoning, so I am not a planner. And I don't want to speak for our
Yeah.
planning department, but I did listen to an interesting conversation at council last night, where there was a proposal to do some more restrictive zoning or planning requirements. And the comment from our planning director was, they had those in place at one point, but they were so restrictive, there was no growth. Like, when you have restrictive zoning, then you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot, because now finding the people that, you've just narrowed the opportunity for the growth that you're trying to promote. So they removed the requirement that was being discussed. So I thought that was an interesting conversation. We're in our comp plan process right now. We're almost to the end of it, right? Within weeks of being to the end of it.
Wow.
I don't think, hey.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been easy. So that's a policy decision that's beyond me. Like, I'm here to talk, I can speak to sewer lines and water lines and roadways. I can't speak to the zoning, so I'm glad you guys are here if you want to say
And I
something.
appreciate that. And I can tell you right now, if I were you, I wouldn't want to restrict it.
Yeah.
But I'm not you. I'm the other guy that's gonna be hurt by it. So it's my commodity that you'll use to expand that could hurt me. So that's why I would want restrictions. But if I were you, I wouldn't want restrictions, of course not. But again, that's why we have the facility and you're open to hook up to it.
I think that's why we did the zoning like we did it up there in that area.
100%.
Sure.
Yeah, for our area, yeah.
Encourage,
To flex.
right.
Yep.
So can I ask Commissioner, so if it's just industrial use or what we're using, PSEC is being used right now, you don't necessarily have any concern because that's jobs and that's going over to Mason County. Your concern then is, big boxes, that could be $500,000 worth of sales tax revenue for each big box or a car dealership or whatever. And so you're concerned that sales tax revenue would go to Bremerton because the sale would be there at the store. So are you proposing, and I'm not advocating this, I speak for one council member, not seven, but is what you would like on the table is some type of revenue sharing agreement. If retail goes into PSEC, that you would want Mason County to share in some of those proceeds in the sales tax.
I would think
revenue.
that'd be the minimum for our bottom line, but in order to protect my businesses that I already have up there, it would actually be better for us to have a restriction on what's placed there.
Right.
And not for all of it, but perhaps just what's off the highway. There's different ways to look at it and to consider it. And it's something that I had thought about many years ago when I had talked to the landowner, and I know the landowner didn't want to do that at the time. But at the same time, to protect my community, that might be something that would loosen me up to look at it differently. And again, I don't speak for them either. I only speak for myself, and but I do live up there, and those are my constituents that I have to answer to. And that one box store closes, I lose my neighbor's jobs, and it's a community business, and there's no need for it unless if we do it to them ourselves. If it happens over time, that's life. That's the selective process. But if we do it to them, it's a little bit different. So I worry about that more than I do anything else. You and I've had people out there that were looking at those shopping centers 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when they were looking to put the bypass down lower. So I can assume it's gonna be the same up above. So with that being said, I have to be afraid of that for my community. So I'd rather look at mitigating something like that. And again, I'm not saying I want anything, but I can stomach that and possibly sign on to something that has something like that. where I have to stand against it currently because of the devastation I think it would do to my community. Just as I'm sure you would do if it was reversed. You would worry about your businesses, your jobs, your everything. But I could see a great opportunity if a big industrial was to go there. How would that not benefit us both? Yes, you'd end up with some housing, we'd end up with some housing. It's not the same. I still prefer to take care of ourselves, but if we had to share it, I could see that.
I would just say that, just to be clear, there's no intent on our part in all our discussions to try to, run Belfair into the ground or impact your sales tax.
Yeah.
Like, that is not the intent of this at all. There's a regional plan for a regional economic growth center, and, we probably never would have even thought of asking you for sewer service unless unless Mason County had come to us to propose it. So, I understand your concern. There's no intent that we are doing something ideally, this is a partnership for economic growth for the whole area to create jobs and housing and, elevate the whole area. That's really, from my perspective, what the vision of this whole process is for us. I understand your concern. I don't have a good answer regarding the zoning. I can't answer that. That's more of a policy type of a decision, but really, we've been moving forward and talking to staff the entire time, trying to figure out a mutual benefit partnership that helps with revenue, helps with flow, helps make your utility whole, gives us an opportunity at a lower risk to provide wastewater service to an area that we want to grow. And when I say we, I don't mean just Bremerton, hopefully, but it sounds like maybe that's what I mean. I don't know. But I think it benefits everybody if we can get growth in that area.
And Commissioner, I do appreciate your concerns, you're articulating them well.
Yes.
I am, with our zoning, there's two things. I'll give you an example. I went to Multicare and personally recruited them to come to Bremerton. They located to Bremerton, but it wasn't Bremerton proper. It's outside of our border. But you know what? They are going to serve East Bremerton. And so, now that's not a sales tax generator. What it is, it's a service I brought back to our community. And I don't care what side of the line they landed on the other side. And so when opportunity is gonna come, if it does, in whatever form, it's gonna be opportunity for, the same as I would consider it for your residents. If something good comes up that creates competition, then that's opportunity for the residents who live there. And when we zone, there's not been one time that I can think of we've zoned to restrict competition. So that's not, I can say from a Bremerton perspective, we've never zoned or made a decision. What we do is we zone for an environment that promotes economic development, job creation, and opportunities for our citizens. And we believe businesses thrive when there's opportunity and there's more businesses in the area, whether they compete or whether there's just more to create that cluster of tax base and economy. That's what we're promoting in Bremerton. And so I get your perspective, understand it, where you're coming from, but it's for us, especially with Multicare, if it had been something else, it's for the citizens. They're gonna get to use it. Doesn't matter what side of the border they fell on.
So just to clarify, you're saying the zone restrictions is a non-starter, basically. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I cannot foresee, unless there's something that, there's wiggle room where we can create something, but I can't foresee, and I don't wanna make a prediction or I don't have a crystal ball on what our citizens will need in the future. I don't know what industry is gonna be compatible. I don't know what the future of big box retail is. I don't know if, I wish I could tell you, I think I see where big box is going. It's not something, I just think I see where it's going. I could see a manufacturer potentially coming in, like who may be that person that provides things that a big box may have traditionally got before. And then from there, a distribution center where we serve the region with different either tools or supplies or materials or, you know, you name it. I mean, that could happen. I don't know what our future is bringing to us. So,
And I agree with you, I just want to clarify that, but more of apple to apple type thing.
Yeah.
If you'd have brought in because car dealerships bring in huge amounts of dollars into the city stuff.
yeah.
If you'd have brought in a car dealership and they'd have opened just on the other side of that border, that would have been a whole different belief you would have had on it.
You know,
Because it would have sucked right out of your community.
Yeah, but if they're providing a service to my citizens, because I served in military, and we are predominant, and if my sailors and my civil servants who are coming in have a place to purchase an automobile, that's a key service. And so that means and again, when you're talking about regional economy, in hypotheticals, I try to stay away from it. We're going to go a little bit into that because we're trying to predict what the future might be. But again, it's about serving our citizens in Bremerton and providing them resources, either that jobs, resources, goods and services. Yeah.
A great example is Lowe's in East Bremerton was within city limits, and then they didn't have the master lease for the store, and they moved outside, and you know where Lowe's is now. We don't get that revenue. I understand your
It
concern.
hurt. I remember I was around when all that happened too.
We survived, and like the mayor said, look, I go to Home Depot and Lowe's. Those are my stores. Okay, that's where I go. And I'm glad I have Lowe's in East Bremerton as a citizen, as a resident of Bremerton. I'm super excited and stoked that we have that there. So
But if you'd had the opportunity, you'd have rather kept it in Bremerton, right?
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's
I'm
my
not gonna-
point I'm making, guys.
I'm not gonna lie to you,
Yeah.
but for the community, it's best that we have the Lowe's.
It might come back if we can annex it.
Well, we're getting rid of B&O tax too. You know, we feel it's a regressive tax. And so to promote growth, job growth and business creation, we've been phasing it out. We're up over 1 million, so 80% of our businesses don't pay B&O tax in the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's, you know, those kind of things, I believe do help if you,
Well, you want to encourage business to
Yep.
come
yeah.
in, but you also have to have the infrastructure to do it.
There's that fine line, there is absolutely that fine line of, supporting the businesses with the infrastructure. So we did the calculation of increased sales tax, employee wages, bringing home those dollars and those type of things offset the B&O tax. And so loss, and then we had obviously goods and quality of life is huge. And so when we have clusters of small businesses, we felt that was a quality of life thing as well as an economic strategy.
Are there other economic impact issues we need to talk about?
I guess there's one, it's an economic impact for a benefit for us. Again, I don't want to hide the fact that I've not been a supporter. I've tried to be always open, but I also always try to look at ways to balance it off or to try and change my mind. The benefit to my community, I try to say to myself, whatever I do, it's a long-term sucking sound when it comes to taxes. What could I do to offset it? What can I do to make it better? One of the things would be, we have utilities that do have issues, or we're getting better with this one. What if we were to find a way to influx some money and put them together eventually and have a way to stabilize the other ones? That'd be better for the whole county, not just for Belfair. So I look at that and I wonder how to get there. Now, I'm looking at your guys' comprehensive plan, and if you were to do it completely on your own, you have a range between, what was it, 59 and 127 million, you're expecting 87 million, or 85 million. You know, what is the value? You're asking right now for basically several times what we actually even produce right now or do. What is the value of that, and what would you be willing to pay to have it, especially for a 20-year or 30-year or something else? I'm sure you'd imagine it wouldn't be free if it was the other side around. You'd expect somebody to buy that capacity, right? How much do you, have you guys done any work to establish what that value would look like and what you think you should pay?
Are you saying like a one-time upfront payment for capacity? Is that what
Yeah,
we're
if you were to take on this much of our system, twice what we do, more than twice what we do right now and stuff like that, you're basically buying into a system that we had to pay for. and you have to pay for it if you don't have it. So if you had to buy it yourself and create it yourself from day one, we just established costs there. And I still think that might be on the low end, and I think you might too, because it changes so fast. What would it look like to buy a percentage of share of an already existing plant? See, if that did occur, do I still like it? No, and I think in the long term, it would still hurt the county, but at least I'd have a benefit in the beginning I could spread around to the county and our citizens, to help keep those other costs low or anything else. So that's just one of the options I looked at for myself. But I don't think we go anywhere and expect that we just get free. The capacity, what would cost you $27 million to build and straight out.
So I don't think we expect anything for free. But the model for us, I can speak to what Bremerton does, and I'm not sure exactly how they sell service, and you have different codes and things, but you buy it as you go, when the customer that wants the service pays a GFC that's buying into their share of the infrastructure, and then they pay connection fees, to get connected, and then they have a rate, right, that they pay for the O&M and the ongoing service that you provide. We don't it would be unusual for someone to come in and pay a large upfront I'll call it a general facilities charge, because that's the only thing I can think of that kind of lines up with what you're saying. For capacity that you're not utilizing, right? You pay when you connect and when you want service. And I would think that that's how this would be structured, is when, let's say we've gotten through the part where we agree to serve and we have infrastructure and we're actually selling service. I think in my mind, the way that works is a customer comes in and they want service, and we start with an availability letter, and I think in this case it would probably be a dual availability letter that would have to be approved by Mason County and Bremerton to serve anybody that comes in, right? Because you worry about sewage strength, and you worry about there's lots of things that you worry about, capacity, all of those things. And then when we get past the point where everyone's agreed to serve and they purchase their service, then I think a big chunk of that general facilities charge for that development is coming to Mason County. You've got O&M, you've got treatment, we would have a little bit of O&M. When you divvy up the general facilities charges for that development, most of it is going to probably be coming south of the border, right? So that's how I envision the payment and the the revenue collection for service.
Well, I could agree with that if it was us, our customers, because our citizens are the ones that paid for it, took on the debt, built it, and did everything. So, this thing, it'd be
Right.
the difference between General Motors and Ford. So Ford comes in and wants to use the plant and stuff, they'd have to pay for utilizing the plant. Chevy's not gonna let you just come in and do that. So for our citizens that built into all that, we did the blood, sweat, and tears, built it, borrowed the money, paid the money off, that went through all my citizens. Nobody in Bremerton helped with any of that debt, and just to come in, that doesn't actually make much sense to me. If you were to buy into a capacity, that'd be like any other business. Is it premium for us? No, because eventually that buy-in even goes away and the sales tax still continues to leave. But it's better than nothing.
We have experience working with people, individual residents and businesses outside of our borders. And so the hookup fees Ned was talking about, and all the calculations that go into it are designed to not only support the infrastructure that we have, but also for future growth required. So we factor in with the hookup fees what's going to be required to expand the system. And that's exactly what you'll calculate.
Yeah, that's what ours is.
Yep, and you'll charge us for that. You would charge us for that. And I'll just let you know, we charge a premium. That's a council decision, but we charge a premium to customers outside of the boundary. And there's good reason for that. As you said, Commissioner, all the sweat that goes into maintaining a treatment plant, or that's there's a whole lot that goes into it. You've got police, you've got fire, you've got roads around it. You've got an entire economy you're supporting that keeps everything around that operating. And that treatment plant sits in the middle of it. And so we understand it, and then the premium goes into a citizen who goes to that citizen who lives outside the border, who's benefiting from a service when they're not inside the city necessarily paying into the tax base. And that's how you get that back. And and then the council, that's their decision on, which I support. I mean, but also a decision on how, a neighbor to neighbor, agreement. And it'd be the same with you.
Yeah.
You'd have control over that. That would be, and that's why our relationships like we're building on today are gonna be important, because when you make those decisions, we wanna have a good relationship so we can make sure we're compatible and we're doing things together.
Well, when we built it, we lost businesses, they closed. You can imagine a brand new system, the wait was huge. We lost a lot of businesses, lost a lot of people even, that couldn't do it. And so that's when I talk about blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, it really
Yeah.
was for my community, but we carried the whole weight of it.
Yeah.
And again, for myself, I just need to ask, are we basically saying that, you don't see a value in purchasing into the system?
I think
And only just being on this customer, we just pay a little more to be part of it?
I don't think we're here to say absolutely no to anything today. Like, this is the first that you've really presented it. I don't know what you think the dollar value is. It's
I
a
don't know.
policy decision. It's a finance decision. I can tell you that finance decisions are getting much more challenging. I think we're all seeing budgets get tighter. Without having like a better sense of how much you're talking about and what you think the value of it is, or, I think a proposal that we could actually present to, the electeds, because there are policy decisions. I can't answer that question today. And just like the zoning, I can't answer that question today.
I was just more wondering if
Yeah.
you were open to it, because that's one of the biggest problems we have with this whole thing. Because in order to get these funds that we're talking about, we have to sign on to something that we don't know what the ramifications are. We have to sign on to something that we don't know what the cost is for the county or what it will cost us. And we don't know the actual value.
Yeah.
Because we're doing it before we have any of that. I always believe in business, you have that first, right? And that's what you always want to try to do in the city of Bremerton, I'm sure. I just look at it the same way, I'd like to know what that is, but.
Well, I can, just kind of looking at it from let's say it's a merger almost. We don't have a path forward that we've seen a merger of this type. I wouldn't know what to use for a model on how we would even cover that. That could be years to even come up with a concept, because it could be a prototype. I believe Mark and others and the engineers who've been around, maybe you've got an example, but the one that we are familiar with is the one where we serve outside customers. And so there is a path forward with that. Not only trying to come up with an agreement of what a merger would look like, it's what your ratepayers think. It's their plant. So they're the ones that put the blood, sweat, and tears into building it. So it's a big one. That would be a huge conversation.
Actually, for us, it's the whole county that ended up doing it,
Yes.
instead of just the ratepayers.
Right.
But your term
Yeah.
merger, I think, is probably the best term I've heard used for what we're talking about here. I think you're probably more accurate than I had even contemplated. It is a merger. So the question becomes, what is the value of that merger? And, do you have a company just come in and say, we merged because we need you so bad? Or we have you come in because we need each other and there's a value to each one, so you buy into a merger? That's a perfect term. This is a merger. So what is the value of that merger? And who carries the weight of the merger? What does it fix?
I think a lot of that too we've got there's a lot of partners that are not in the room, or players that are not in the room, that I would like to bring into the conversation, like our attorney. Lot, I think, in downtown Olympia is a perfect example of how neighbors work together. And so I'm not saying that I'm supportive or not supportive, because it's a path forward and it has to be decided, but no decisions are being made today.
Right.
But there's a lot of research, a lot of unanswered questions that I think that we have to have here. And I'm kind of watching the clock here, so we're supposed to end by 10. So I just want to make sure that we get answers, whatever answers we can get.
And I appreciate your straight, I believe you're giving me straight answers. I really appreciate that. I wanna make that very clear. I'm thankful, because it doesn't feel like you're playing a game with me. You're saying what you believe, and you're saying what you think, and hopefully you feel the same for me, that I'm saying what I believe, what I think, and, you know, I am looking at any options, so.
Well, I appreciate, you know, your comments and everything else, so, and you are a representative of your district, a good representative. You're rather vocal all the time, so we always know where you stand. But I wanna make sure that others get questions answered as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the merger was specifically only, but you're great, the arrangement is, I mean, we're gonna take, we would grow our relationship with an agreement like with this grant and starting this planning and getting the interlocal, our relationship would change. It would, we would be more involved in each other's, you know, providing input for each other's policy decisions. It obviously would change dramatically. There'd be a lot of updates we would be sharing back and forth with growth. I think it would change dramatically. Yeah, the corporate merger, like a sharing of the citizens plant, that's a whole different, yeah, and so, but Commissioner, I hear you, we are at the 15-minute mark, and my goal was we had a starting point, and my hope is we've elevated our baseline towards coming to an understanding. And so is now the time to start summarizing where we are and how we might move forward.
I guess one thing I would ask is have you had the opportunity, looks like you have, to take a look at the ILA that was presented by us?
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I have some comments. Would you like me to go through mine first, Mayor?
Sure. Yeah.
And I have, my comments are in the back. Here, Mayor, here you can have that copy.
Okay.
Not that.
Let's see what.
Okay. What did you call it? Plain language. This is some pretty
Yeah.
plain language. So that would be
I
helpful.
said, they did a great job
Yeah.
writing. I could understand this without.
Sure, yeah.
So.
So on the first page, we talk about a plan to on item C, a plan and schedule to serve growth is to be submitted to ecology when actual flow reaches 106,250 gallons, which is 85% of your 125,000 gallons per day, right? So, is that average monthly flow? Is that peak flow? Once you hit peak flow 3 times?
Max month, average annual flow, 3 consecutive months.
Okay.
Permit trigger,
Yeah,
And that's according to ecology.
that's our permit.
yeah.
Okay, I just think that would be good to clarify in there. That wasn't clear to me. So I'm down on G. It says the Washington State Department of Commerce awarded the city $3 million to design the Belfair WRF capacity upgrades and city conveyance infrastructure for $1.6 million, which fulfills item FC. And FC is engineering reports and design are completed and approved by ecology in accordance with WAC 173-240-060. And I'm going back up to F. The following procedural items are required prior to serving, should the county agree. So my concern is that it sounds like we're planning on using the grant funding to do planning work to make a decision as to whether or not we're gonna be served. I think that's a risk for Bremerton. I think it's a risk for Mason County. If we're going to do planning work to still try to figure out if we want to serve Bremerton, I think it's an out-of-pocket expense, because what I really don't, especially since Bremerton is the recipient of the funds, excuse me, what I really don't want to have happen is we spend that grant money and then we decide it's not going to work out, and then the city, I know initially, is going to be on the hook to repay probably whatever we spent. So I don't really want to, that's a risk for us. So I don't have a problem with, coming up with funding to try to do some more work to to evaluate, to get to an answer, right? But I don't think the grant funding should.
Is there a better way of putting it maybe? Because you gotta understand, for us, the idea of knowing what's in it before we agree to do it makes a lot of sense. Is there a different verbiage that you can see that can help us get to the same place where we're both protected and we find out what
Yeah, I
it's
think
gonna
so.
cost, what it's gonna do, what it's gonna.
I think it's an out-of-pocket expense for both of us, though. I think it's like, it's not grant funded at that point. I don't think we should be spending grant money until we've got a clear commitment for service and that we're really partnering to provide service to the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center. I don't think grant money should be spent until some strong commitment, strong, reasonable commitment. How about that? And I don't think we have that yet. We're not there yet. We're not comfortable yet as a group, right? Hopefully we get there. I think that's our goal, is to get there.
And you will put all this in writing for us so I can.
Well,
I'm very.
I can email my comments
Okay.
to
Please.
Loretta and Mark. And,
I'm very visual too. I'll hear everything you do and go over it, but
Yeah.
when I see it, it stays in my brain forever. Sadly.
Okay, there's a minor strikeout on H. It says some portion, planned for serving some portion of the southern portion of the Sound Industrial. I just think it's cleaner if you get rid of that language. Under agreement, it says now therefore it's mutually agreed that Mason County conceptually agrees. I would rather see it say conditionally agrees. That's usually the language that we use for our availability. It's a conditional availability, right? We agree to serve you, but here are all the conditions that you have to satisfy before you get service.
I don't have an H.
You don't have an H?
I don't have an H on what I have.
FGH.
Is it on the backside?
It's actually, I think it's the, right here, first page.
Okay.
Right there.
You got an H now.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay. It says, under agreement 3, it says both parties review and concur that the engineering reports are sufficient to address the details necessary to develop design documents and a more robust interlocal agreement. My comment is financing should be part of that discussion. It's not just engineering. Like a big part of what we're talking about is what's it gonna cost? What kind of benefit are you gonna get? And what kind of cost are we going to incur? And I think before any of us can move forward, reasonably, if we're gonna do engineering reports to vet whether this is a good merger, then I think the finance part of it needs to be considered also when we do the engineering report.
Financial and engineering.
Yeah, and that includes like GFCs and like upfront cost of dedicating service and what kind of rate, like, not like pinned down to the penny, but at least a reasonable approximation of what everyone can expect financially, right?
So now are you asking that before or after the fact? Because I agree with you completely, everything you just said on it before. Before I would sign, I would like to have that kind of information.
I think it has to be part of this engineering report review that we're trying to do to get comfortable with this merger.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't think it's gonna be satisfying to come up with an engineering document that talks about technical capacity and the engineers in the room are ecstatic, look at what we can do technically.
Yeah.
And then this whole financial risk piece that you're talking about and how do we benefit isn't really clear to everybody. I think that's gonna be a problem anyway, right?
Yeah,
Stephanie would get excited about that.
yeah.
Let's just repeat history.
Yeah, so I don't know what it looks like. I'm not the financial wizard in the room.
I like it, as long as it's before.
I think that's my point, is hey, if we're gonna talk about it, let's add that to what we're trying to do.
And nothing locks you in. Again, after that,
Yeah.
after we're going, it's the same with my council and council president here. You'll be making decisions on every year you pass a budget, charging for hookup fees, what you charge outside of to your customers inside of the Mason County border and what you charge outside. I mean, all of you're gonna make those decisions every year during your budget. And that's what we do here. And so I was thinking of another customer, Port Orchard. City of Port Orchard's a customer of ours. We've been working for years with them to try to promote and help them while they grow. And they're bumping up against their capacity, but we're a partner. It's just between our jurisdictions. And that's just relationships that we'll just be working on ours.
Mayor, what is the surcharge that you guys have on top of your basic charges?
50%.
50% above?
And I'm not sure it applies to there's a 50% surcharge, 100% for the rates. You know, it's 150%. That's not very, I didn't say that very well. So for rates, for sure. I'm not sure it applies to GFCs. I'd have to look.
Okay,
I'd have to look.
so 50% additional for rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't. So I'm gonna skip the or language because I was a little confused by it, and I'd like to come back to it because I'm not quite sure what that means. But and then number 5, the very last item, it says should both parties agree that reports are sufficient to address necessary details, but determine that sewer service provision is not the best alternative for either party, the parties agree to approach Commerce about a scope revision. I've already asked our funding administrator about if there would be an opportunity for a scope revision, and I didn't get a favorable response. So I'm not sure that's a hard no, but it's an uphill battle to do a scope revision. If we decide not to do this partnership or merger and move forward with the funding, I think that the funding's probably just not gonna be awarded. I think that's the way that's gonna work. So, just to be clear, I don't think that's gonna be a thing.
So I'm on the Public Works Board for the state.
Okay.
And a scope revision is doable there, but I'm not sure that, because it was a capital budget request, that it
Yeah.
would be I know that you can do them,
Yes.
so it wouldn't be something that we could ask, but.
I think when I talked to Mara, who's our administrator, she said, well, specifically the money was appropriated for Mason County and the City of Bremerton to work together to provide sewer service to the southern portion of the Puget Sound Industrial Center. So fundamentally, the scope is to provide sewer service to the Puget Sound Industrial Center, and when that isn't any part of the scope, you know, between the two of us, I think it's going to be hard for us to renegotiate and split the money amongst us. I think, so
Because it's pretty narrow.
it's not definitive, and I didn't, you know, but that's my impression of where we're at with that. Okay.
And then procedurally, it typically goes to the board, but then it goes back to the legislators representing. And so
Yeah.
they're the ones ultimately making that call.
They would have the final say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the timeline for this grant?
Oh, so I just got an email this week, and I can forward that to you guys. It was from Mara, who basically said, hey, good news, if the governor signs the budget, the legislature has appropriated this money for the next 2 years. So it's our June of 25 deadline would move to a June of 27 deadline, if the governor
If it's
signs
right around the
the
corner.
budget the way it is.
Yeah.
And assuming
I
he
guess
signs
it's
it,
the
it should
opportunity
be
to
signed
find
by
the
the
answers.
Yeah, we have some time.
Are there any other schedule drivers from your perspective, aside from
Just,
the grant?
yeah, well, the basic opportunity costs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we know that the cost of labor and materials, permitting, everything is gonna keep going up. And so, I don't know of any other schedule drivers.
I would say this, from my perspective, this process has been long, and getting to the table today is amazing for me because we've been trying to have this honest conversation and like get on the same page for a while. Hopefully this is helpful, but there's been some long gaps between, you know, deliverables and discussion. And so ideally, part of this would be that we agree to move in a timely manner, like a reasonably timely manner where we're responsive to deliverables and that we're communicating regularly, that sort of thing. So hopefully that's part of so
Before you retire, Ned?
we got 4 years, hopefully.
So, Loretta, so he can retire.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I would love to see a sewer service to a business in the Puget Sound Industrial Center at the south end before I retire, so that's 4 years out. I don't know if we can make that timeline or not, but,
Our current commission is actually set here for a while, so I think that we're in an environment where
great.
all 3 commissioners have an opportunity to get educated and have this discussion, and I don't foresee any changes coming in the very near future, right? So their terms actually go out a little way, so we're actually sitting in a position to actually have that discussion. That was part of the concern when Commissioner Schutte actually said, oh, hey, I'm not running again, right? It's like, okay, we need to make sure we bring on the new guy and get him up to speed so that he can understand what's going on.
And he reads everything, which is a great addition to things. It's always nice when you have people willing to do the work, and he does, so.
Did you have any questions before we left that?
No, I really don't have any questions. I'm just listening and taking it all in. I live in the world of research and development in the private sector, and so I see the economy is gonna go through some serious changes that it's gonna be really difficult to predict.
Yeah.
I tend to agree that the big box store is dying. I don't think they're gonna be around. You know, the Home Depot, Lowe's, those will be around, because nobody's gonna have, you know, truckload of 4x8 sheets of plywood shipped to them. It's just not gonna happen.
I'll be scared if it does.
Yeah. But
Although they do
I don't
deliver,
know,
so.
Amazon's delivering kit
we have
houses.
a number of young people that work for us.
Right.
I know a number of young people, and if you're under 35 years old, you pretty much don't go shopping at all. Everything is delivered to your house, everything,
Including groceries.
including groceries, everything. And,
We don't have that in Belfair yet.
well, it's,
Nobody delivers to us yet, but it's Amazon. I just mean, we're waiting for Walmart or somebody to say, okay.
it's coming. It's coming real quick. So, you know, trying to figure out and predict exactly what the impacts of this is gonna be. I mean, I look at the jobs aspect and think, yeah, people don't care about that invisible border. That's right. They're gonna, if they want the jobs, they have to cross the borders, so what? It's not another country. There's no border crossing. So, you know, looking at all the details and the cost benefits and those sorts of things, you know, that'll take me a while to absorb all of the potential there. But I see the jobs as the big positive for Mason County. We have jobs, we can grow. So,
We all need the homes.
yeah, we need more homes, we need more, you know, that's, free market works. We flood the market with homes, costs come down, price of a home comes down, so. You can't flood the market with homes if nobody has a job. So, not a lot of questions, just, that's things running through my mind.
I just had, so back to the document, when we got to or and all of the language under or, I didn't quite understand how that folded in or what that was. Is it an alternative? Is it, so maybe we can talk offline, Loretta, about, I don't have any like strong concerns about it. I just didn't quite understand how it fit in the agreement.
These are the items that the commissioners did not see in the agreement, they wanted to see
Yeah.
something, right? So
Yeah.
mitigation,
Okay.
you know, what are the
Okay.
talk, in terms of capacity, ownership, all that stuff. We're super fortunate that we actually have Richard Dickinson on staff that actually worked with Lot and was a part of that. So he understands what a regional sewer system looks like and some of the challenges that come with that, or opportunities, so thanks.
I will add to my comment earlier, the one thing that concerned me was, you know, what do we do if the industrial complex is sending stuff down to our system that damages our system? How do we resolve protecting Mason County's infrastructure and property and things like that? How do we, I mean, that's probably further down the road. But that's a concern.
We all have that concern.
We all have that concern.
Like our ordinance, and I'm sure your ordinance has sewage strength requirements, and if there's somebody who's
everything.
testing T's on laterals, you can go sample what's coming out of a business. When you start having a problem and you have to go upstream to go try to figure it out, when you figure it out, there's consequences for whoever's doing
Yeah.
the thing they're not supposed to
Yep.
do.
And/or
So-
pre-treatment
And-
requirements
yep,
or
yep.
the other.
That can be
Because
part of the
customers-
service requirement, is you're gonna provide pre-treatment before you discharge anything to the system.
And,
Yep.
and in new development, it's gonna be 100% concurrence, right, from Mason County. I mean, flat out, and then anything that veers off of what we all discovered, it's the same as what we're doing right now. I mean, it's just, that there's protections are built in.
So the mayor and the chair, thank you so much. Ned, I do think this was helpful. And it helps me to understand things a little better and gives me some ideas of what we're even looking at or not willing to look at, because that does make a difference as well. But some of the terminology, I like the way it came off, because I do think that I see this more as a merger than I do anything else. And for me, that's where value and that's where risk, I think, comes in. But I wanted to thank you for that. I want to ask you to do one other thing after all this, though. We had a government-to-government meeting with the tribe, with our local tribe of the Squaxin. I would hope that you would reach out to them and talk to them about some of the concerns, the environmental concerns that they have, and see if that is something that can be mitigated as well. I know what they are, but I don't understand them as well to represent their side. So I would hope you would actually just reach out to them and let them describe it better to you than I could.
Yeah.
Although honestly, I would like to have a meeting with all stakeholders. So that would be the tribes, the port, the city, it'd be a rather large meeting, I know,
Yeah.
and might be hard to schedule. But I do think that because there are so many stakeholders, that,
Go ahead.
that I think that having the communication, this was amazing. And I'm so glad that we were able to get this arranged. Thank you, Loretta and Mark and everybody else that played a part in this. But having this conversation and including the other stakeholders, I think would be a huge value to helping us make our decisions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking through the bullets, and, for the most part, you have to serve Belfair UGA. That has to be your number one priority. And then, as far as connection fees, rates, charges that's how you make up for the impacts on the system. That's how we do it. You have a formula for that. And then the rest are the unknowns we talked about, that we would be together on the financial portion of it, what the future brings to us, what comes forward. That's our partnership. And so every concern I can understand that was listed here, because we have the same ones. And then, I think I think it's been helpful too. So putting this together, I appreciate the commissioners, you and staff wanting to do this. Squawk them, I believe that would be helpful to have them hear from us that we don't have a crystal ball. And the environmental mitigations are just incredible. And they may not, maybe the Squaxin aren't as aware as, excuse me, as maybe the Suquamish are, who we deal with on a frequent, if not daily basis. But when something new is coming to a jurisdiction, maybe it's time to hear from us. We don't know what the future is, but here's what we go through to ensure environmental impacts are mitigated. And it is extensive.
And I think one of them was the aquifer. There's
Yeah, absolutely.
different.
Yeah, we are really careful with stormwater controls. And so that's a whole other discussion with the development community. But with the environment, we can assure them there's a lot of controls in place, and so we should schedule.
Residual chemicals that, potentially from the airport was
Yep.
also a big concern that they had.
Yes. Okay.
If there are any, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would
how
say
you
that
test
they're
that, but-
Particular
keeping their own in
PFAS,
their system, though.
Using that for.
Yeah.
I don't see that one as a risk for me, because
Okay.
Yeah.
they have their own system, and that was standing their own. I have
Yeah.
a lot of other issues, but I don't want to get caught in the ones that I don't have,
Yeah.
that aren't gonna affect us.
Just to be clear, the port does own acreage at the south end of the Puget Sound Industrial Center that's not part of their industrial park, and I think it's more part of the airport proper that they
Yes.
think is developable at some point in the future. So there is port property that could potentially want to come this direction.
Extension of a runway or.
Well,
Well,
they
I don't know if
have-
it's a runway, I think it's gonna be more like ancillary airport, like
Aviation.
hangars.
But they have it in their comprehensive scheme to sewer this area we're talking about. That, the scheme is not a bad word, it's literally our comprehensive plan, courts call it a comprehensive scheme. So it may sound bad, but they have their scheme to sewer that area.
We're gonna rename ours to a scheme now.
That's probably a council one there.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
not.
No, I don't like that.
That's the state requirement, that's what it's called, for their comprehensive plan, but they have that in theirs, and
I'll talk to Arna about that. I have a phone call anyway, so.
So definitely want to respect everybody's time, but path forward is, what does that look like? Do you want us to come up with potential merger options? Are you talking about, because in my mind, a merger is different, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, you actually,
I
you do have,
wasn't suggesting that either.
but that is what it is.
well, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page
Yeah.
before we go away with this, because I don't want to give staff an assignment that is not gonna work for Bremerton, right? So, in my mind, from what I've heard from one commissioner is, if we did a merger, there's a buy-in associated with coming into the system and becoming a partner, right? And in addition to potential changes or differences in fees, possibly,
Yeah.
associated with connection and usage for serving individuals in that area.
Right, so-
Is that something you're willing to talk about, is a potential merger where you're actually gonna buy into the Belfair system?
Yeah, if we're defining merger as a customer, as we understand it, where connection fees, hookup fees, connection fees, all of the inspection fees and engineering that goes into it, and up to the ratepayers, if that's a merger, then yeah. But if the merger is buying part of the plant that's a different, I don't even
That's
see
what
that as a
I
path
may be
forward.
wrong, is that what I'm hearing you say?
That is what you're hearing me say, but I also heard him say that they're not interested in that. I disagree with that, because I'm still gonna, when the time comes, that's gonna be one of my
Right.
biggest discussions.
I- Yeah, and I think Ned's accurate. We don't want to remove anything off the table. The complexity of buying a plant, Mark, I'll leave that up to you, Commissioners, Loretta, how much research you want to do in the feasibility of that. If we're going to define merger as that.
Okay.
I would have concerns with that.
Yeah,
In my mind, this was like the border is the line. Like we own everything north, all the pump stations, all the pipes, we operate it, we maintain it. There's that GFC we talk about, there's gonna be some GFC for that as part of the
Sure.
connection fees. Everything south of that line is, all of the piping, all the treatment plant, like you're a service provider at that point, right?
Yeah.
And you own and operate all of that, and we keep it clean at that point. That's what I was
Yep.
envisioning for this merger.
yeah, and all the
Yeah.
costs we will work together. And as an enterprise fund, you'll have to generate the revenue to pay for the system. And so we know that. And that's how, and then the side benefit's gonna be jobs and houses and people and getting benefits. But yeah, we understand that.
The ILA as it's presented with, I think it'll work to continue a conversation if we can focus on getting this ILA to where we both think that electeds can approve it, so that we're moving towards the engineering report and that there's a sense of partnership to try to move forward to an answer. I think that's a good next step. Seems like that would be the next step.
What was that? I don't disagree with that. I think
Okay.
that's what,
Gives us a clear thing to do and to take the next step and bring it
and to
forward
simplify
again.
it down for me, the roadblock I see with the ILA is that it's, as soon as we do this, it's a have to. We basically sold everything at that point unless we put it in a position where we don't. And so I'd like to look at it to see what the options are. Because although, I'm very strong in one opinion, as you've seen, I'll change. If there's a benefit and there's something, I will change. I may not like it, but I will change and go with whatever needs to happen in order to benefit my community the most.
So Randy, one of the things I am clear on is that the intent of this ILA is that there is a promise that comes with it.
I know that,
Right?
and that's the worry, because maybe different, go ahead, no, because
I don't think so.
Yeah, I heard
You
Ned
don't?
propose something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
I- that's what I was
conditional
thinking,
and
too.
it has language,
Yeah.
I keep grabbing this piece of paper because I gave you my copy. But,
Yeah.
I think, this is where I'm at personally, right? Like, I don't see us executing a commerce grant until we sort this out and that both parties are comfortable that we want to move forward with a partnership to provide sewer to that area, wholesale, treatment, and we do the collections, and that we have a comfort level that we're gonna move that forward. I mean, that's my perspective, Mayor. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a risk associated with taking the money, Bremerton taking the money, if we're not gonna get service. Like, nobody wants to waste the money, nobody wants to spend it in the wrong way, right? So if what's comfortable to move it forward is executing this ILA that says we're gonna do more evaluation, and come back together, hopefully with a schedule and a timeline, I think that's something that we should talk about too. But I think we can work on getting this to a place where it's not a commitment, a have to, but it's like we are committed to working together.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard, that's why I was saying, I thought this was positive.
Yeah.
When I heard for
Yeah.
myself, I felt like we can be put in a position where we can continue to move forward and not do away with our protections.
Absolutely.
As we're looking at this stuff. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm very, very concerned with every aspect of it, I don't wanna hurt, and I know none of you do.
Yeah.
But I live there, I don't wanna hurt any of them.
Yeah.
I don't, I wanna protect them, I wanna make their life better, and I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody else does too. So, but you need information to do that, right? You need to make educated decisions, not just because we're in a hurry to get the money. So I was very happy with what I'm doing, but here.
Yeah, so
I
we
would just
have
ask
some-
that we're timely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
have end products, and then that's the time to
Yep.
review that and decide whether it's to
Move things
to the
along,
next
once
step.
we get to a place where we think
Yeah.
we can take something for approval, get it through the process, move to the next step of doing work, have it deliverable, consider it, make decisions, yeah.
Let's throw a calendar out. Well, my commissioners are actually gonna be all about utilities over the next couple of weeks, because we're bringing our proposed rate structures next week, so definitely
Very
it should be
excited.
at the top of their mind, and they will, they'll think they'll learn more and more about the details of the operational side of that and potential impacts that come with that.
Yeah, and future capital, all
Absolutely.
those good
Yep.
things.
Keeping the crap alive.
So thank you very much for coming down, I appreciate it.
Flowing.
Glad we finally were able to get it together, and let's get the next meeting on the books.
Right. If we had time and we were to stop for a brunch, lunch, breakfast, where would you recommend? Is this an easy question to answer? or-
Depends on what you like. 'Cause,
Okay.
If you like simple, you got Nita's, but Blondie's is I've been eating breakfast there, and they seem to be offering a pretty good breakfast here at Blondie's,
Okay.
which is just around the
Ours
corner.
is down on CJ's Corner.
Yeah.
Leaning towards breakfast.
My favorite was always Suzanne's up there, but Suzanne's, but they're never open, so I don't know what to
I
tell you.
like CJ's Corner. It's just down on Railroad and.
CJ's
Oh,
Corner.
So we recommend all of Mason County.
I know, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Do you recommend anything in Bremerton?
Actually, yes, I do.
Actually, yes, I do.
I think there's a place that has these really interesting Bloody Marys. that I've
Oh,
seen
yeah.
before.
Oh, yeah. That's a garage.
That's a garage,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard of that.
Don't
Let's
be
go there.
directed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to close up, I want to thank everybody at the table and in the room. We've had great discussions, and I want to thank Mason Webb
Always.
for being here. Our staff is amazing, both sitting at this table and behind me.
Yeah.
So, but thank you guys for coming in and sitting with us, and it was a great conversation, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks,
would
you guys.
also like to add in there, we probably better be watching the governor, because if he doesn't sign, it changes the.
Oh, we'll
Change
find
the
out.
urgency.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I know you
Yeah,
will.
yeah,
Hopefully by the 19th.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
To the next.
Hey, look at that.